how humans decide to use AI is still up to humans, but machines know what comes next. So,
Yeah,
and I was like, after I read that, I was like, holy shit, it's not wrong. Like, we're in
yeah.
this window, we can choose to use it in a way that benefits humanity and just makes our lives easier and makes us more intellectually stimulated. I mean, there are ways to use these technology to get deep into intellectual thought processes.
We have like two parallel societies. One, the most utopian that we've ever seen, where there's like drones delivering stuff and like literally like I pull up my phone and like I can have whatever I want delivered in 2 hours. And as we saw during COVID, like the increasingly dystopian society that is like literally like we're working behind the scenes, maybe making those deliveries.
Yeah, I remember this sort of moment of deep irony, realizing that the tech that we love and are building when it comes to anything distributed and within the world of Web3 is sort of meant to be the counterbalance, and to see uh, integrity quickly get thrown out the window as we're building these systems that are meant to, you know, be the counteracting force against it. It's just, yeah, I think that fit really well to think of it. There is just this like, you know, vacuum that gets created, and humans gonna human, as I like to say. And like, sure enough, and we're seeing, I mean, the new two EDs just got, announced at the EF. There's like these clear reactions, I think, to people realizing like, where are the adults in the room right now?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to guest season of Green Pill with JournoDAO. We're gonna roll this nice and loose and riff and organic. Basically, our theme for this season, we're gonna do probably 4 episodes, and we're looking at how to function in systems that are accelerating towards transition or collapse or whatever we want to call it. So we're gonna break down different systems like community, sustainability, leadership, all of this good stuff. So today we're going to talk about building in chaos. We're going to explore community, cosmo-localism, and maybe network societies. We all are pretty opinionated on that one, so we'll see how far we get into it. And quick intro, I am Crystal with JournoDAO, and everybody here is from the JournoDAO family. Basically, we have a background in journalism and academics, and also production. And yeah, I'll kick it over to you guys.
Why don't you go first, Taylor?
Cool. Yeah. The short bit here is spent quite a bit of time in sort of academia proper, within sort of post secondary in Colorado, and uh, sort of found the tension that existed when big bureaucracies and systems don't adapt to the world around them, which I think will be a theme we come back to. And so 2016-17 timeframe, went headfirst down the rabbit hole of crypto and Web3, and sort of have been at the intersection of those two worlds ever since. Community, nonprofit, and impact. Learning Economy Foundation is a nonprofit. That's sort of my core focus, but also just have a deep interest in these sort of liminal intersectional spaces between education, technology, and academia. That's where I'm coming from.
Nice. And my name's Eric Mack, and I will represent definitely the least educated and most foul-mouthed among us. Well, depending on how animated Crystal gets, I think. But yeah, my background's in journalism for the vast majority of my career, and then the last couple of years more focused in Web3 and trying to bridge those two as much as we can, and we'll see if we get into that here at all. But thanks for putting this together, Crystal, and good to be here.
Thanks for joining me and joining us. Also, I didn't give my background, so just so y'all know why I'm opinionated and animated and F bombs fly. My background is in photojournalism, did that for decades, freelance TV production, and then stumbled into crypto in 2017 through privacy lens from some really amazing hackers that taught me this stuff, and have managed to work in community building and comms. It's some very interesting endeavors. We won't get into that one just yet. But all right. Also, squeaky chair and There's a dog, that's why there's weirdness. So, he's my sidekick.
Might be the first season with a mascot. I don't know if there's been an accompanying animal for any previous green pills.
I think he should be the green pill mascot. I
It's
mean,
on honorary.
last year he wore the Downs, glasses at your pizza thing, at the
Yeah.
pizza party, so, yeah, awesome. So where do you wanna start? I have some notes here. We could start with integrity vacuums. All really positive stuff here. Integrity vacuums, human systems, localism, community building. What are y'all feeling? Which rabbit hole do we wanna start with?
What is
Just
an
start with
integrity vacuum?
just start with the light stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Light stuff?
Maybe frame up integrity vacuum because that
Yeah,
seems obscure and esoteric, but I think there's a lot of practical pieces underneath it.
I think you are right. So, integrity vacuum, we stumbled onto that a few, God, I think it was last month. Taylor and I were working on some stuff and got into a conversation with our AI models in the middle of the night. That also, tends to happen a lot. And we're looking at, you know, one of the issues in our ecosystem is this lack of integrity across the board in all niches throughout crypto. And what does that integrity vacuum look like when there's no leadership power structures in place, especially when you're looking through the lens of community? What does that mean, and what type of nefarious activities or weird things can surface in a power vacuum, especially when it comes from a place of just lack of integrity?
Yeah, I remember this sort of moment of deep irony, realizing that you know, the tech that we love and are building when it comes to anything distributed and within the world of Web3 is sort of meant to be the counterbalance, and to see uh, integrity quickly get thrown out the window as we're building these systems that are meant to, be the counteracting force against it. It's just, yeah, I think that fit really well to think of it. There is just this like, vacuum that gets created, and human's gonna human, as I like to say. And like, sure enough, and we're seeing, I mean, the new two EDs just got, announced at the EF. There's like these clear reactions, I think, to people realizing like, where are the adults in the room right now? We'll see how those folks unfold. I think they seem like good choices, but anyway, but I just deep irony is where it's at least where I landed when we started to dig into that vacuum that exists.
I mean, in terms of like decentralized protocol world, like this one actually seems like kind of an easy one to address, which is like there's kind of I don't feel like there's any choice but to like ignore this shit and like role model something better. It's kind of like like I think what I try to teach my daughter, and like what I think like you try to do with young people as much as you can, like um and the analog is the easy analog is always I think like the internet at large, the other like very successful protocol, which is, as we know, largely filled with shit and pornography and spam. And like we've built filters, and we didn't get it didn't go away. We didn't get rid of it, but, we have become very skilled, and we have tools now to look away or to, not see it at all, and, I wouldn't really if it were addressed almost any other way, I think I would, rage quit. So, like, this one to me, like, seems fairly easy, and then maybe the deeper question in there is like, okay, well, that's obfuscation to the real question, which is, well, how do you elevate the better actors? How do you drown out the shit? Like, I guess maybe that's what the real question is.
I don't know if that question has an answer. It's a really good one. Um, because it also depends on what segment of the industry we're talking about. In certain organizational structures, that integrity vacuum exists at the very top. So it trickles down organically to the rest of the organizational structure, and those who do speak out get kicked out. So then you can look over at the impact side where that system is designed for everyone to have a voice and for some sort of equity should be baked into the system, be it through governance or through other types of social norms. And yet you have a lot of bypassing in those systems and also a lack of leadership. I mean, some of the leadership is really strong, but some of the leadership just is either too young or just not used to dealing with all of these gaps that we have from actors doing whatever in whatever dark corners they can and not realizing that that's at the heart of a community. I think that's also comes down to the community builders. Like, what are they trained? What is their background in just dealing with humans? I feel like some of the best community builders are those who have bartended or worked in coffee shops or worked in with humans making eye to eye contact and know how to resolve conflict on the fly, when it arises so they can see it before it happens.
I feel like in 2025, I've never felt more conflicted between, be the change you want to see. I think Eric, you're right. Like, what else is there? Just go and model and like do what feels right so that others can see there is a different way. But like, I've also felt this pull towards we've got to call out the shit when it stinks, which is not, that's been a shift. Like, that's not my natural. I would rather just like go on, do work that I'm motivated by and be the model. Uh, but it does feel like there's a lack of leadership from a perspective of like when this integrity vacuum clearly exists and it's the gravitational pull is there and obvious and felt. I mean, some of it's overt and like explicit when things really, when the shit truly hits the fan, but often it's subtle. And so when it is like who what's our responsibility to just put our own reputation at stake and call it out. And I think there's just a lot of like, eh, that's someone else's problem. I mean, this is the current sort of reality all the way up to current administration in the US at least. Those that are willing to just sort of fold and be part of the reality. We're not going to change it. There's power. There's this is just how humans operate. Better to fold in, and yeah, sure, model it and like be a good representative, you know, lemming within the system. But I think I'm feeling more and more tension where it's like sometimes it's really obvious, and when people are clearly taking action that is, known to be uh, part of the problem, you have to call it out. And I don't know. That's just we can all do, I think, a better job of finding the way the moments to do that and the ways to do it that aren't part of the collapse, as it were, aren't sort of creating deeper fractures, but are actually part of the composting. We talk about like what does it look like to actually build that back into foundational human and cultural systems that then can lead to something better.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not opposed to calling stuff out. It's like a little hard to know like what we're I think we might all be thinking of like different things. Like I'm specifically thinking of like when I'm talking about ignoring and stuff and like modeling, like I had in mind like, the scams and the rug pulls and like the Libra coin of it all. Like that's kind of what I had in mind in terms of like yeah, like leadership issues in more like prominent like organizations or like like important organizations to the ecosystem. Like yeah, that's a different thing. And like kind of like role modeling and also like calling stuff out. These things are definitely not mutually exclusive. Like I think you can do both for sure.
Crystal, this idea of soft hypocrisy, which we've landed on a few times, like that's where it becomes problematic. Not the overt obvious ones, but the subtle soft versions of hypocrisy or, just like gently pulling the rug. There are versions where it's like, what does that look like?
Well, and
Anyway,
I feel like too, like Eric, what you're talking about with the rug pulls and the scams, yes, there's so many of them, they're everywhere. That's almost the downstream effect. What starts that is what the CEO or the C-suite or the founders decide to do. And I think we've all accidentally ended up in that room with those people and watched a certain personality type, be it a narcissist or a Machiavellian or whatever, make a decision, and then the downstream effects just roll through and hit on so many different levels. And it's also it's simultaneously an issue of communication. Yeah, we function in the weirdest system in the world where crypto Twitter is our main comms platform, and that blows me away because it's one of the most toxic places to communicate in, and it thrives on narcissistic behaviors and the separation of individuals. That like it really thrives on putting people into different categories and camps and that conflict. And how do you take that and then run an organization where your main communication platform is designed to polarize? I think that's also part of the conversation.
Well, if you work
Maybe
in
a
one of
good
those
track record.
organizations, yeah, I try to constantly advise people to not do that, and there's like more interesting. I think podcasts are actually great and more healthy, not without toxicity and problems, but like generally you get like more substantive discussion, and then the paragraphs and substacks and ghost blogs of the world. Also, you get like more substantive discussion there. So yeah, kind of all, forever trying to push away from social media, I think is helpful.
I was going to move us into this sort of human versus tech
Yeah.
systems conversation because I think we're all in real time trying to architect our own version of like what feels healthy, what platforms like, you know, and I think just recently we're feeling like this sort of gravitation back to some of the just like tried and true Web 2 stuff. And it's like, oh, that's doesn't feel good having invested so much in some of the Web 3 tooling, but there's cases where it's like we got to meet people where they're at. So I don't know. I don't know. Crystal, you might have had thoughts on where we want to go with this. I think we have a lot of thoughts. This could be an hour plus just
Yeah,
in that.
totally.
But
And I think you brought up a great point because I know I've been struggling with that this week. Last night, actually, I stayed up till 1 o'clock because I was like, "Am I really about to set up a Patreon right now? Am I about to look at Substack?" I've spent so much of my life, the past I don't know how many years, just talking about decentralized comms tools. All of the people that I've tried to onboard, I'm like, "Oh, don't use that. Don't use this. Try our solution over here." And it just doesn't work anymore. So I think that is definitely again, a reflection of the decisions that are made by a small group of people across the, different parts of the industry that then impact that downstream effect. Like, why is there no Web3 version of Substack that is usable that I could give a journalist and say, here is an option that is decentralized? Like, it doesn't exist. Not in a way that is fluid and that shows that someone sat down, a human sat down with a technologist and said, "Here's the problem. Here's a solution. Let's build that." Like that is basic. That's a basic thing that we have missed, I think.
I mean, I think being an absolute purist or an absolutist in any way is a pretty good way to kill progress or kill any movement. So like, I think I've moved beyond the trying to be the absolute purist here. One thing I did kind of think about this question in terms of like, and I tried to think of like what institutions both like on a personal level for me and then on like a larger like social level that we could all relate to, what institutions are still functioning and still trusted and still seem to be like acting for the good. Because I think if you come down to like most successful and functional institutions right now, you kind of wander into a lot of big tech platforms, but I think we would maybe not agree on how positive a force that is. So I'm wiping those off the board. But like the institutions that I think are still like doing a pretty good job and kind of holding the line, like on a like social level, and you can argue with this, but like it is like the judiciary, it's the courts, not perfect, still problems, but like in terms of like functioning for the greater good, they're doing a better job than almost any other institution on a national level that I could think of. And like then on like a local level and like in my day-to-day life, and I think I've mentioned this to you before, Crystal, it's the like local search and rescue team that I'm on, which is, and I live in a town where there's just like tons and tons of nonprofits, and most of them are dysfunctional. The most functional one I've ever seen is our search and rescue team, which has less of a budget. Nobody's paid. It's all volunteer, but like really is like more trusted and does a better job than far more well-funded nonprofits that I've so much better well-funded nonprofits. And so like I tried to think this morning, like, what do these things have in common? And the answer I came up with that I don't even like myself is they are very clearly structured, rules based. Expectations are in writing and like in set in stone. And these are like old school, like almost military like level of detail oriented control. And I don't like that that's the answer, but like that is like if that is the key to a successful institution, that is like infrastructure and tooling that our ecosystem actually offers and can improve upon. I mean, Ethereum can improve the judiciary. Ethereum can improve deployment of search and rescue resources. And so like maybe, like, you don't it doesn't have to be pure. We don't have to have, like, the fully decentralized and integrated, publishing stack or, like, stack for whatever you're doing, but there is kind of this, like, basic infrastructure we're offering that kinda seems to be what the world needs right now. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense, actually, and I do agree. And on both the judiciary and that centralized rule system, basically, for a mission-driven org. And recently, on the impact side, as part of an open community where none of that existed. And as a professional community builder, that's terrifying because then you're creating a community container that is designed for aggressive people or predators or whoever wants to wander in and extract from the community because there's no rules. There's no guidelines. There's no, if this happens, do this. If this situation arises, do this. And there's no one that can really step up and say, hey, this is why we have a protocol in place when XYZ happens. So then everybody just kind of looks around at everybody and like, oh, hey, what about this thing? What about that? What about that? Then you have to hope somebody takes the initiative to make the container safe again. And that's terrifying as a professional community builder, honestly.
Yeah, we're like we seem to try to tack integrity and trust and these things on kind of to the end or something as opposed to yeah, the I think I don't think I could disagree either. I mean, where does like a fair amount of inte well, I mean, we'll see as we go forward, like where does integrity still exist in numbers? I think it is like the courts, and we can point to some of these things. I think academia, I could point to pockets where I would say that's true. There's certainly places where I'd say that's never been further from the case in that world. Um, but yeah, I think it's maybe more about just finding the gaps and yeah, not being a purist, trying to find if we go upstream uh, and find where there's this like clear fit into this cosmo-local sort of frame, which is affecting something maybe on a small scale in a localized. I'm trying to do what came to mind when you were saying the volunteer work, Eric, was for me, no surprise being in Colorado, a local brewery. These are people that want nothing to do with technology. They come into this community. It's a very small, localized environment, and I know the 12 people there that I could ask a favor of right now, and they would be like, would be no questions. They would be there to support because we've had this very like social high trust dynamic. Sure, over the over a few beers once in a while, but like, um, so I think we got to go upstream, yeah, I guess, as opposed to what happens now. Things like Galaxy or Layer 3, these like community like quest-based add-ons that kinda come da it's so br it's I mean, even in the name Layer 3, it's like, "Oh, we build the blockchain, then we've got, like," and it's like this 3rd layer that we can, like, figure out that, like, can incentivize community trust and integrity, um, as opposed to, layer 0. Why didn't Layer 3 I don't know if you guys know some of these are super successful, systems, and technically kind of brilliant. I really loved Galaxy when it came out. I did a bunch of quests and stuff, and like cool, but now that I look back on it, it's like, man, that was all backwards. We never went upstream to fix the human problems. We just tacked it on.
Well, it's the gamification of community, which you do need in some aspects. Like some of that, the quest building serves a really good purpose, but it all comes back to the humans that are building the quests. If you're building a quest to extract, and I've been on teams that have done both, where you're building to extract, and then all you get are people who want to be part of that extraction process. Whereas you can also use a quest to educate and to bring people into your mission. And then the people that join that community because they've gone through your process are the ones who really want to be there, who are mission driven. And again, it comes down to people in, because I've been in these rooms, in a boardroom, making a decision. And most of the people that are making those decisions aren't community builders or don't have a human connection to the people they're trying to extract from. And that's a huge part of the problem. We've tried to use technology to remove that human element where like I love the bar scenario. Like there was this community third place that I went to out in rural Washington 2 years ago, right after I joined Consensus, and was at like the local Eagles Lodge, which is kind of like the VFW. So everybody, all walks of life, getting together, drink cheap booze and gamble. And they had the most diverse group of people you could imagine in this very conservative small town, and they hung out together 2 or 3 times a week, and they did karaoke, they danced, they sang, they did all these weird things, and then when they get into the voting booth, they're not gonna vote against someone else's human rights because they don't understand who they are, because they just broke bread with them, they just got drunk with them and sang, you know, John Denver songs on stage. They're gonna vote to support what that person needs because they've had that human connection, and I think, I love DAOs and I love the infrastructure, the technological infrastructure we use, but sometimes it's used to remove that human element, and that's a real problem. I kinda went on a tangent
May-
there.
Maybe, I mean, maybe that's the, what can Web3 do to nudge back into those environments or be the bridge? I mean, I think JournoDAO is directionally sort of doing some of that. Um, so maybe that, maybe we're dreaming too big. Maybe that's, and I think people are naturally doing it right now anyway. We see this gravitation back to just local. I mean, I think Eric, you were ahead of the game. You kind of felt some of this anyway, but like, and I've been living it. But I think there's a moment now to have all the things we're building and the tooling in Web3 be part of that process. Because right now people are like, I think there's a lot of fear, and that's a natural, like, you retreat back to your family unit or, these comforting environments. So I don't know. I'm not the technologist necessarily to go and architect what that looks like, but I think that maybe is is part of the goal, is to help be a bridge back into those cosmo-local environments.
Uh, One of the fun things of being a journalist is like I have a lot of questions and I can spot problems that I have no answers to. So I can do that a little bit. But what like when we look at like you were talking about some of the yeah, the, like, kinda shallower, like, Web3 quests and communities, and, like, what I when I look at, like, a lot of the Web3 communities and DAOs, like and especially in kind of, like, the more recent iteration, um, is I see, like, a lack of there's a lack of accountability and, like, there's like, the stakes are so low, so it kinda feels like higher stakes, more accountability is, like, how to really drive, like, I don't know, some kind of I don't really even like the word impact anymore, but I guess that is what I'm talking about. Because and like in the first iteration of DAOs that I like first got drawn into, so like 3 years ago, there was like some level of that, like where like it was a group of people coming together and they like agreed upon the stakes. I'm thinking largely of like Bankless right now, and like you people coming together and deciding that they wanted to like publish something or do a podcast or something, and there was some level of accountability, and it was a lower level of accountability that I was used to. Like you could kind of come and go for and as you pleased, and maybe somebody would pick up the slack, and there was enough interest that was possible for a while. In the end, I think that lower level of accountability is part of what did in a lot of those early DAOs, and it seems like it's kind of been replaced with. I know I saw in our prep document like I hear the word care like nonstop, and it's like all about like creating care, which is great, but it can't be the only thing. Like at some point, I feel like you've like to care, you do have to like kind of kick somebody's ass and be like not literally, but be like, bust somebody's ass and be like, you didn't hold up your end of the bargain here, or like, part of caring is actually showing up. Um, and so I don't know. This is where Eric turns into grumpy Gen X guy overnight. But I don't know. Is that too harsh? Am I missing something? Am I the jerk that would be showing insufficient care right now and get thrown out of the room?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that's why JournoDAO has stuck around this long is because we hold each other accountable because it's such a small group. And it's like it functions like a family. But I feel like these bigger organizations, yeah, that is definitely a thing where the accountability doesn't exist. So everybody just kind of it's like hot potato. You just keep throwing the potato to the next person and eventually somebody gets stuck holding the scalding potato and then they're like, "All right, let me fix this problem." That seems
I
slaughtering.
had like smaller. I know what you mean with the bigger organizations, but I had smaller organizations and like DAOs and some of the more like kind of volunteer oriented organizations in mind as well.
Yeah, oh no, same. Yeah. I think that the one thing back to, Eric's crusty Gen Xer comment, I think that's the thing that allows a DAO of an older generation to work is because we don't worry about what the other person's gonna say, like, if you don't do something that you said you were gonna do, and it's very important to the function of the DAO, then we'll just say, "Hey, did you do the thing?" And we're okay with calling each other out because we also love each other in a way that I can tell you to fuck off and say, "Oh, by the way, I love you," in the same conversation. And I know a lot of smaller I don't know many organizations that are able to do that, really. I feel like you almost need that level of brutal honesty and acceptance at the same time, and it's very difficult to get to that point in an organization where people are ephemeral. They can just float in and out.
Yeah, the radical candor framework, which got over popularized, but and sort of was born in within Google. But I think that's to me that they have to come together. It's like the care and the kick in the ass is what like either alone isn't going to do it because you either become an asshole without the care or you like yeah there's no accountability on the other side. So I think being the grumpy like that's actually what's needed. Like a lot of folks, I have no doubt, and I think we can all point to those that like kind of grew up as keyboard warriors and like technically because this is such a technical industry. If that's all you've kind of done, and then you end up in a position of leadership, Crystal, to your point, like we should, there should be a mandate to like go work at a restaurant or go, bartend or because you can't escape it. You learn really quick, you know, what the hierarchy is, what leadership feels like, and who's willing to like care about you and also kick you in the ass. And when you feel both those things simultaneously, like those are the people, that again, you're right with JournoDAO and some of these smaller communities. Those are the only people I want to spend time with, are those that are willing to do both.
Yeah. And I think too, to bring it back to this topic of accelerated transition or collapse or whatever, those are the people I wanna be around when the shit hits the fan. Like, we've talked at JournoDAO for years now because Eric lives off grid, and we've all talked about, "In collapse, what are we gonna do as a family?" And everyone's like, "We're gonna move to Eric's land and, like, live near him, and then somebody's gonna need a luxury shitter, and someone's gonna need this, somebody's gonna need that, and we'll all just live off grid together because we know we'd have each other's back, and we know how to do conflict resolution, and we like each other." And those are the people you do wanna be around when the systems collapse. I mean, where I live right now, I live in an apartment complex, and I really love my neighbors. I know if the shit hits the fan, I go knock on somebody's door, and we got each other's back. So, I feel like that is one of the things that a lot of these keyboard warriors are about to find out is that if we do really end up in a place of systemic transition, then it is going to come down to the people who are willing to hold that hot potato for longer than 2 seconds and find the solution together. Like that's just human nature.
Yeah, and we're already there. Like, this is part of the known feeling of this fear and retreat back to local, yeah, collapse. That's obviously like, if it's going to be an evolution. It's like, but transition, there's zero, no question in my mind. We are absolutely in the middle of a very obvious transition. So, yeah, where well, naturally folks will gravitate to those environments, but I think there's a lot to be built in the meantime that can make it feel a little smoother for folks.
So, I mean, I think we tend to visualize this transition, collapse, whatever has been happening, I would say over the last 10 to 25 years. I think we visualize it kind of in the wrong, like kind of science fiction, like the way that would go down in a 90 minute movie where like shit literally falls apart. Whereas like the reality of what is uh happening and has been happening is like we have like two parallel societies, one the most utopian that we've ever seen, where there's like drones delivering stuff, and like literally, like I pull up my phone and like I can have whatever I want delivered in 2 hours. And as we saw during COVID, like the increasingly dystopian society that is like literally like we're working behind the scenes, maybe making those deliveries. Um, like like collapse really looks like inequality going in two separate directions, but like constantly interacting like throughout every day. And so like the challenge I think is how to keep those parallel societies of that are increasingly unequal, how to keep them in contact with each other. And so it's like a little bit heartbreaking, I think, to see it like the thing that drives me crazy right now more than any is just like kind of knee jerk cheering for whatever your team is, whether it's like a political team or nationalistic team. Like it doesn't really matter, but like
And an L1 team, yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. But I mean, Ethereum is the best L1. But anyway, but I mean that no, that is like kind of what made me gravitate towards this ecosystem. Was there what there did seem to be more of a focus on neutrality versus other places, but at the same time still acknowledging I would work with people that are like, "Oh shit, Solana did this a lot better," you know. And so like that kind of that's like kind of more the attitude we need, like society wide, is to like, you know, game sees game and like game recognize game, but then like also like how can we all begin to play more on the same team, in all games. So
Yeah, pluralism. We just listened to Glenn while up in Boulder, and it's like that. It's again, you know, part of it has just been, I guess, tied to the evolution of radical markets and radical exchange, and now how that's sort of been put into practice, whether it's in Taiwan or elsewhere. But like, there are models of that really working for a lot of people, and that like that, you know, that can happen. I think I struggle with to your point, this disconnection, things like, the network state slash society. I don't see a lot of work in the tethering. And again, no, uh, Balaji also did a keynote as part of this event that we were at. And, there's a lot to love about those sorts of ideas, but it certainly feels like it only further sort of, fragments and fractures people, even though underneath it feels like this very pluralistic, diverse approach to go and like be part of a network state that is entirely online and kind of crypto driven. Like, that is going to be very hard for most people. 90, maybe 90%. It used to be 99. I think we're slowly, pulling more folks into the world of Web3 that can make sense of it. But Uh, yeah, it's uh, it's got to be both, I guess. This like world of abundance and the you know we will all have all the things and not have to worry. Like that doesn't feel right. Certainly, some of the network state stuff doesn't feel right. But I think that's where we thrive is like trying to figure out where the bridges are that don't exist that need to be built so it can be both.
Yeah, because 'cause we're not gonna get a utopian arc, and I don't wanna live in a techno-feudalist society either. And so it almost has to be people calling out the, the fallacies in those systems. Like, I love when the network state first came out, as I study political science, I'm like, "Well, that's fascinating." I study a lot of nation collapse and what makes a nation collapse. And I thought it was a fascinating concept in the scenario where a real large nation state collapses. Like, that actually does somewhat make sense. But to try and stand that up parallel right now and think it's gonna work is really stunning to me, and that really, there's aspects of that concept that I think are great, that you can extract this component here and this component over here and maybe make something that is viable. But t to then, like, create an entire movement around it and take a younger generation and tell them that this is gospel, live by it. That's insane to me, that's a cult. Sorry, I just took us down a dark corner, but, like, we need to kind of come back from that and, like, again, be humans. Like, we're not gonna be we need roads, we need education systems, we need the things that public goods provide, and to think that a technologist or a billionaire, I mean, we're seeing it play out in real time, like, they don't have those solutions, they just privatization and entrepreneurship are the solution, and in some cases, yeah, that is a solution, but not in every case. None of it's a monolith. None of it is applicable to everything.
The,
Like,
the cult the cult vacuum and integrity vacuum seem to come hand in hand. So I don't think you're
yeah.
crazy.
Well, I think they feed off of each other. In a vacuum, a guru can arise, and we see that all the time in this industry. You see it in religion. I see it in yoga. In those vacuums, in leadership vacuums, that's where a guru can step in and have a cult following. And then you're in a different conversation. And the other times, I love the Ethereum ecosystem, and that's the one I dedicated my time to. But there are times I look around, I'm like, oh, I'm just in a cult. Oh, all right, that's interesting. It's a good cult for the most part, and I'm like, they don't really mean it in the way that cult is defined in other, like religious areas or whatnot. But yeah, it mimics the definition of a cult for sure.
I guess I kind of find myself saying over and over again, like looking around, and my mantra has become that I see nobody that I totally agree with, but I'm a little bit disappointed in everybody. Uh, and yeah, so I feel the same way about the network state, where it feels like you could have. I read that book, and it feels like I could have just like cut off like, okay, here's the concept. The concept is good. And then it kind of gets into the point of like where he wants to take it and how he wants to implement it and how I think he started to do that. It's like, no, we can just leave that behind. We don't need to do that part. And it kind of reminds me, and about the same time, I was like kind of getting into like some anarchist philosophy. I was like, this is good. This is good, good concepts, good tools. Don't really like where a lot of you guys took it. Uh, like
Yeah.
there maybe maybe we just don't have to go that far, and, I guess
Most cults are like grounded in probably some really useful wisdom and truth. You know,
Yeah.
oh,
no different.
totally, yeah.
That's how
Well,
you get
because
people in a cult.
you have to
It's
appeal to
true.
something human, right?
Yeah. And then they come in. Yeah.
I live by strong opinions loosely held, and I think anybody that sort of moves through the traditional sort of privileged capitalist VC driven you're going to have strong opinions strongly held in most cases because that's what fills your bags. So I think that's always the thing I appreciate about I guess just my parents and my upbringing is I have built some really strong opinions, but I've also like it's pretty easy to let go of certain things when I'm like, oh shit, got to have a little humility. That was wrong. I missed that one completely. Um, so it's the strong opinions held with like religious conviction that that's where the problems surface. And crypto and Web3 has a lot of that. You know,
I feel too like this is where our generation, like we were talking about earlier, it's our job to call it out, but we also grew up in an analog world. So we were part of that transition into the world we're in now in a way where we had to learn the tech to continue working professionally. But we know what the world was like before that. So I think a lot of this younger generations that get into the network state and the pop-up cities and all that as a beacon of how to live 24/7, they don't have that grounding in an analog world. And so this does make more logical sense to them. But at the same time, some of the leaders in these groups, they haven't dealt with their own egos and trauma yet. Like a lot of this, like I was thinking about this last night. I've been on calls in organizations that I've worked in where everybody was just like on a Zoom call in trauma bubbles bouncing off of each other, like in those inflatable sumo wrestling costumes. Like everybody's trauma was just like boom, boom, boom. And at the end of the meeting, you're like, what the hell just happened? And no one got anything done, but we just watched everyone's trauma spiral all over the place. I'm like, well, that's fascinating. So I feel like too, like these vacuums that exist is partially because, and it's hard work. Like not that dealing with your ego and your self awareness and your processing your trauma is easy by any means, but you can see in a lot of structures where no one or very few people have dealt with those things. And most people, we don't deal with those until we're older anyway. So it's really hard to have, I'm on a tangent here again too, but it's really hard to have, young leaders in these positions making such big sweeping decisions that impact so many people that haven't had the opportunity yet or taken the time to deal with, you know, what their lived experience basically.
You think it's much worse? I mean, I'm just thinking like, projects, teams I've worked on now, and typically most teams, it's like there's going to be like some very capable people and like some maybe kind of dead weight people. Like it's been that way kind of um, like when my first job out of college was in this like tiny village in Alaska, so there's only like 600 people there. And so you have like this kind of microcosm where, and you can just like, you can see in this community, and it was an isolated community. So we were like literally all stuck together. Like you could see like who's pulling their weight and who's not, who's like the superhero that like everyone relies on, and like, so, like, I guess do you think I feel like maybe it's kind of always been that way, and maybe it's, like, magnified in some way by technology, social media, like, do you think it's worse, or, we're seeing it differently now? Is it the same as it's always been?
I think we're seeing it differently. I think like what popped into my mind when you said that is that in a lot of virtual organizational structures and remote work, you can portray yourself as someone who's doing a lot of work because it's performative and then not. And so then you have this imbalance of what's getting done and who's carrying the weight of making sure things happen. Um, yeah, I don't know if that answered the question. Taylor, I think you've got
Yeah, and it feels just it's different in that there's this sort of digital twinning that has evolved, and so we've all got these like kind of fractured identities where I can even if I'm typically the one in a physical space that would like carry my weight and maybe even be the leader that everyone looks up to. Like I think yeah, we're just seeing different uh, slices of identity that we all carry. We all know we carry different identities. Like so, I think it's just different because then those get expressed uniquely in online virtual environments. But you're right. I mean, I don't, we see it all the time where it's like, oh, that's story as old as time. Like this is just how humans have operated. We've got, uh, wetware that is hard to change, even though it feels like it often has changed quite a bit in the last decade or two. But yeah, I think there's something about the spaces we operate in, certainly in crypto and Web3, because they have this digital layer. Even doing stuff like this is as kind of as close as we can get, but it also, it's also different. So I don't know.
Maybe
It's
that's the
different, but the
thing.
same.
Right, and maybe that's the thing with the integrity vacuum is, like, the technology, and in particular, in, like, the crypto space, it's kind of, like, amplified, because obviously, like, Sam Bankman-Fried, pretty good example of, like, somebody, like, of who, like, epitomizes the integrity vacuum, but, like, really did it on an incredible level, like pulling in Tom Brady and Larry David and everybody, taking the whole world down with him. I mean, taking an industry down. So like, yeah, maybe it's about like something about the technology and the the transparent and decentralized and distributed nature of it that allows for amplification of the integrity vacuum that's really dangerous, and maybe that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. I think you nailed it. You know, it's easy to manipulate and put forward that you are acting from a place of integrity virtually and then not. Like I've been on teams where I worked on a team for a while and then saw them under pressure virtually. I'm like, all right, team's doing good. Saw them under pressure IRL. I was like, holy shit, I'm gonna have to get rid of all these fools. Like, but the virtual component covered it up. And that team also knew how to manipulate in a way that I was like, oh, well done. The manipulation was really good. Like, wow. And I think too, yeah, I just don't expect people to act that way. And I think that's part of it too, is like Sam Bankman-Fried is a great example. Like we expect a certain level of integrity in a transparent, sovereign ecosystem, and people know how to leverage that to make you think that when they're doing the polar opposite. And it's, I mean, he showed how easy it was to do.
Yeah, dude, that's so true. Like one of the first DAOs that I really like dove into, and people can sleuth and figure out what I'm talking about pretty easily. But one of the one of the first, the whole thing started online, obviously in a DAO, and like for 6 months, planned planned an IRL conference without most of us ever having met in person. And then when we all showed up at the conference site, man, did like shit just like explode when like there was the the personal interpersonal problems, and they were really bad in person. The thing kind of went off anyway, but it did not end without lawsuits being filed months later, and just like a complete collapse of the organization.
We should be prepped. Like anyone that's like been a part of an online dating platform realizes this reality of like you show up, you're ready to have dinner, and you're like, this is a different human. This is not quite what I signed up for.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, that's a very
Well, I mean, Crystal, this may you can cut us off since we're I think getting closer to the hour and maybe teasing too much towards the next episode. But certainly within journalism and across big industries, we've now got you know this sort of new AI layer to contend with that I think can further be this like obfuscation. We're already seeing it where it's like, ah, well, that was like AI kind of had a piece of this, so like it's creating this weird space where like truth is dissolving, and everyone feels like, uh, I mean, it's exciting. Some of the stuff we're working on is like we can see why being able to have that mirror that really is this like honest, objective sort of uh, soundboard to feed back and like give you sort of honest thoughts on what the how your thinking's evolving and what the state of the world is. But I think that's the danger is we've also now got this layer of AI where it's like, I didn't do it. Sorry, that was my AI. And like whether that's like known and disclosed or not, we've got this what used to just be this, digital layer that you could still kind of find out where it went wrong. We've now got this added, you know, AI twin problem where where does yeah, where does accountability come from when we've all got the potential to the AI ate my homework problem?
I
Wait,
feel
is
like
this like an excuse that people are accepting? Like the AI fucked it up and I didn't check it, and not
Well,
my
sometimes
fault.
it's
Like,
true. That's just part of the yeah. I've had a couple cases where it's like justifiably
yeah,
like, well, don't rely on these things that are getting better but
right,
still hallucinating. So
yeah.
I think it's real. Yeah.
right, right. And then like you might throw forward something that an AI spit out and be like, okay, well, here's what I generated. But I'm going to offboard the actual checking of the LLM to somebody else, or
If
it's
I
just
if I'm
like,
already inclined to like if I don't have integrity to begin with, this is a great moment. Gotta be like,
right,
now I've got an accomplice in my crimes. quite
And
literally
yeah,
in a lot of cases.
that's where AI becomes a mirror. Like, we're on a razor's edge right now with AI, like, I mean, we use it heavily.
Uh-huh.
Taylor and I have got an AI project going on, but at the same time, like, it's just a reflection of how the humans use it. So if we choose to use it in a way that's good for humanity, then good for us. If we don't, then the machines have won, basically. And it's just gonna amplify whatever we put into it. And we can see this already in every social media platform that has bots at scale. LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. They've got bot armies that are steering dialogue because of the way they are replying to comments and to news articles and whatever. And that's just really just the beginning, I think, or one little microcosm of AI that can drive journalism and news and that feedback loop.
I mean, when we say the bots have won, like this phrase, I always get stuck on this phrase. Like we mean like, I mean, really, we mean like big tech ones, right? Because like because like somebody still owns the bots.
Yeah, I think so. I think for right now, big tech wins. I think eventually, if the guardrails aren't put on AI in a certain way, then who knows? Maybe AI wins. I don't think we're going to be. There's a part of me that can fall into the dystopian, like we were talking about earlier. That dystopian novel is really easy to fall into, or movie about how AI ends. But I mean, just ask AI. If you get deep into your models, just ask it to tell it what it thinks about our human journey right now, and it's pretty telling. I mean, Taylor, you had something that we put out the other day. What was the it was that one sentence at the very bottom. Basically, humans know how humans decide to use AI is still up to humans, but machines know what comes next. So,
Yeah,
and I was like, after I read that, I was like, holy shit, it's not wrong. Like, we're in
yeah.
this window, we can choose to use it in a way that benefits humanity and just makes our lives easier and makes us more intellectually stimulated. I mean, there are ways to use these technology to get deep into intellectual thought processes and bring old wisdom into new situations and bring philosophers into the room that you wouldn't be able to have a conversation with. And yeah, it's generated by a intelligence machine, but you can make it your own. But at the same time, this technology can also be used to do ungodly things that reflect the worst of humanity.
Yeah, I think it's a huge mistake to like just use these tools for the sake of efficiency, which is alluring. And of course, that's what's happening right now at scale. But at least my recommendation is like take at least a moment in that process, whatever that is, like write the report, do the research, whatever you and stop and say, you know, because it is a mirror and a really powerful one, all of sort of human wisdom baked into really concise statements that can come back like push a little bit and I think it's healthy because we're pushing back on humanity in a way by doing that to say, well, what are these tools for? Where are your, where are the blind spots? Why are you saying what you're saying? I do it all the time where it's like, hold on, you just put quotation marks around that. Is that truly a quote from, or is, and sure enough, it'll come back. Oh, you're right. My mistake. And it's just like, I don't know. It's a nice to build that feedback loop in to realize who's in control. I love these tools now because I feel like it's a very human endeavor as opposed to us losing agency and autonomy by just letting it, you know, be our efficiency for the sake of efficiency and growth and all the things that I think right now are driving the industry. And we can't expect, any of the it is still big tech. We can't expect them to sort of be a part of that process. Um, they want to grow. They want to make money.
Well, if you don't
So
use it
that's
to
the thread.
if you don't use it for some form of creativity to generate new content, new thoughts, the thing eventually falls apart. Like if it's just if we just have AIs that are like trained on like AI generated content, then like eventually the thing regresses back to just crap. So like if you're not using it as a tool to create new stuff, like we're really in trouble. I think that's the key. It's kind of interesting to like float back and forth between journalism world where I think and a surprising amount of people are still kind of holding it at arm's length, justifiably so, versus in like Web3 world where it's just like, Oh, I have a 20-page research report that will stand in for whatever due diligence needed to be done. Like maybe a happy medium somewhere between those two might be more prudent.
Yeah. No, totally. And I think what one of the better things that or one of the things that I've enjoyed using it for recently is pattern recognition. So I'll take we had an issue in a community recently that was very public. So I was able to take all of the public comms and run it through models and look for personality disorder and look for, ways that a community builder might address this. And then I put it through multiple models, Chat GPT and Claude, to get multiple perspectives, and then asked it to run possible scenarios of conflict resolution and also where it could go if it wasn't resolved at all. And that I'd never used it in that way before, and it was shockingly accurate. And I was like, "Oh, this is like having a forensic person in your back pocket. Like, am I crazy right now for seeing this pattern that I'm seeing, or is this a real pattern?" And then you run it through a model, and it'll give you different patterns that it is recognizing.
Did you
And
ask it for a diagnosis if you were in fact crazy?
oh yeah, I said, "Am I being crazy right now?" And it's like, "No, you're not." And I'm like, "Don't blow sun." I actually tell the model not to blow sunshine up my ass, and it was like, I'm not." Um, and that's when I kick it over to Claude. I'm like, "All right, Claude's a little more direct with
Oh,
me." And Claude will
so
be
you've
like,
got a people pleasing model. I see.
"Yeah." Taylor has designed his
It,
models to burn down the world and eat themselves, and then I have designed my models to be my therapist, basically. That's kind of how that's why it's
It it'd be a fun I mean, like, trauma bumper cars you were talking about earlier, like, it'd be a fun experiment to, like, have some version of those people that are, having seen those things play out, like, take an hour within maybe a pre-trained model that is it's hard because, like, that I mean, this is what any good therapy session is meant to do. You, like, open up the closet and really try to work on, whatever's under the hood that you may not even consciously be aware of. So to go through that sort of process in a safe, you know, uh, AI driven space prior, I have a feeling like the world of trauma bumper cars would at least be minimized. It would look different.
I did that with my models for the last 2 years of the organizations I've worked in. When I would like, after a meeting, I'm like, "All right, am I being insane right now?" And I would put the scenario into the model, and it'd be like, "No, here's the pattern that just surfaced. It's not you. This is," and it would get into psychological profiles that I could then go research on my own and be like, "Oh, yeah, that is accurate. That is what I just witnessed." So it does make processing in trauma in real time somewhat easier, and then that memory is baked into your model, so it knows you too well. I don't know if that's good or bad, but there's that.
not good for the therapy profession, I would think.
No, it's really not. I like having a therapist on call. And then every once in a while, I'm like, maybe I should talk to a human therapist at this point. But
When I
I
anyway,
think
talk
they'll
to
become
all
more
human
important in the
therapists.
near term. Yeah, then it's like they'll still be very important. I think I don't know what the stats are. My sense is that actually, like, therapy is probably, up, but I think the long term, yeah, it's probably worth as a lot of folks are doing, like, what does the evolution of my profession look like right now? Um, plan for that, but, like, I think right now, the human version is still pretty safe and probably as important as ever.
no, I think it's an excellent point. Well, I feel like we've run the rounds, but we are at a good closing point. Is there anything else y'all want to add in to this conversation that we missed?
It's all fine. Everything's gonna be just fine.
We're not all going to show up on your doorstep and be like, give us a pod.
I have a great the dog with the fire, everything is fine. I've been using this alternative mimetic version, which I think would fit the green pill framing broadly, which is the same exact meme, but there's like this really abundant green, organic, like, and it says everything is fine, and it's like, no, no, everything is fine. There is there is uh yeah, a version worth working towards, even though, you can still be the same character in that meme feeling like shit's on fire. Um,
No, that's a good one. I feel too like I fall back on all the tantric yoga that I learned in the last few years and transmutation of energy. I feel like that's what we're going to end up doing a lot of personally and in our communities is just transmuting whatever shit show has surfaced into something positive. Oh, nice. I like it. See, you transmuted the fire into green. Lovely.
You know what I
Cool.
actually believe? Okay, I'm sorry.
No,
One
go.
one last thing. What
Yeah.
I so what I actually believe, I will tell you over and over again, and I have told my child over and over again, just in terms of the general state of society, that this is not normal. And on the scale of our individual lifespans, and we're all middle age, it's not normal. But like what I actually believe and have come to believe is this is normal. like this is what it is. We're in the weird time, and you always get the weird time, and the weird time does end. Uh, spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! I think it's gonna get weirder and worse, but then it gets better, and like probably dramatically better. So this is not normal, but in the grand scheme of things, this is normal. So like this is where we are.
I think that's a great place to end it. Yeah, that's you're exactly right. Yeah.
All right, we solved it.
Cool.
Good.
Yay.
Building in the chaos. It's like that to me. That's it. Like, how can we prepare ourselves to feel comfortable with the madness? Because it's here, and it's. Yeah, I think you're right. Like, we've got a little ways to go, and I'm here for it. As we like to say from our friend Hunter S. Thompson, if you buy the ticket, you take the ride. We're all on this planet and on this ride together. We bought the ticket, so got to try to enjoy the ride.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't have
And
to
we
end it like he did, but yes, he was
yes,
right.
yes. And being that we are middle aged, we have been through this many times. Gen X has seen it and been through it, so that's why we're here. So cool.
Yeah, we'll be back next time. Thank you, Crystal. Thanks, Taylor.
Thanks,
Thanks
everybody.
all.